California's new workplace violence prevention law requires employers to establish, implement, and maintain an effective workplace violence prevention plan. So what exactly does that mean for an employer? Will a workplace violence prevention policy cut it? No. California requires much more than that. Will it be enough to draw up a workplace violence prevention plan? That's a good start, but again, no. California requires that your workplace violence prevention plan be fully implemented, and that includes conducting a variety of employee trainings and carrying out specific responsibilities. And that means converting your plan on paper into an active workplace violence prevention program. In this video, I'll discuss the differences between a workplace violence prevention policy, plan, and program, and what California requires employers to do in order to comply with its new workplace violence prevention law. Hi, I'm Mike Corwin. I help employers implement an effective workplace violence prevention program that keeps employees safer and complies with the requirements of California's new workplace violence prevention law. My approach to preventing workplace violence is based upon what I learned during my 30-plus years of working as a civil and criminal litigation investigator, where I investigated many work-related violence incidents and learned to keep myself safe from violence while working in some very dangerous places. I've got a great tool to help you get started developing your workplace violence prevention plan in compliance with California's requirements. My free workplace violence prevention checklist. It's a roadmap you can follow as you develop a workplace violence prevention plan. Just click on the link in the description below. A workplace violence prevention policy is a formal policy that prohibits violence and abusive behavior in the workplace. A policy typically identifies prohibited behaviors and that engaging in those behaviors in the workplace leads to consequences up to and including termination. Many employers already have a prevention policy in place, along with policies prohibiting harassment, discrimination, and even absenteeism. But California wants employers to do far more than just having a policy in place. In fact, California Labor Code Section 6401.9, which forms the backbone of the new workplace violence prevention program, doesn't even list having a workplace violence prevention policy among its requirements. The main purpose of a workplace violence prevention policy is actually related to discipline and whether an employee can be fired or face other punishments for engaging in behavior that the policy prohibits. It does not take steps to reduce the safety hazards that employees face. While every employer should have a workplace violence prevention plan in place, it's really a minor element of an effective workplace violence prevention approach. California's new workplace violence prevention law requires employers to create a workplace violence prevention plan in writing that is in effect at all times and in all work areas and be specific to the hazards and corrective measures for each work area and operation. The law requires an employer's plans to identify the persons responsible for implementing the plan and to clearly describe each person's role in that process, identify effective procedures to get the active involvement of employees in identifying, evaluating, and correcting workplace violence hazards, in designing and implementing training and reporting and investigating workplace violence incidents, identify procedures for a complaint and investigation process, and to create a policy prohibiting retaliation for reporting workplace violence incidents, to identify workplace violence safety hazards and approaches to remediate them, identify effective procedures to ensure that employees, including those at a supervisory level, comply with the plan, to create effective procedures to respond to workplace violence emergencies or potential emergencies, including a process of alerting employees to safety emergencies, evacuation and sheltering plans, and how to contact those assigned to assist during a violence incident, to identify approaches to training employees in a variety of elements of the plan, including strategies to avoid physical harm from workplace violence, to develop a workplace violence incident log and what to include in the log when an incident occurs. Creating the prevention plan is the time for employers to do the critical thinking involved in assessments, incident response processes, and about the specific type of risks employees face and the type of employee training that would accomplish the goal of keeping employees safe from workplace violence. The key takeaway from California's requirement to employers creating a plan is specificity. There is nothing global about this process. California wants each employer to focus on the specific safety hazards, risks, personnel, and response mechanisms that are unique to their employees' needs. There is a lot of work involved in getting this process done, but California requires employers to do more than just this process. California requires that the prevention plan that is created be fully implemented too. When a plan goes from being created to being implemented, it goes from being a plan to a program. For employers, the transition to a program includes training and carrying out required specific tasks, documenting and maintaining records regarding workplace violence hazard identification, evaluation, and correction. Training records including training dates, content or summaries of the training sessions, names and qualifications of persons conducting the training, and names and job titles of all persons attending the training sessions. Records of workplace violence incident investigations conducted. Employees must be trained in workplace violence hazards specific to the employee's jobs, the corrective measures the employer has implemented, how to seek assistance to prevent or respond to violence, and strategies to avoid physical harm, and that workplace violence incidents involving any employee are reported, investigated, and recorded. The law also identifies when employers must conduct training. An employer shall provide employees with initial training when the plan is first established and annually thereafter, and that additional training shall be provided when a new or previously unrecognized workplace violence hazard has been identified and when changes are made to the plan. Thus, California makes it crystal clear that just having a plan on paper will not work. The plan must be fully implemented through training, hazard identification and remediation, and specific processes to be followed in response to the reporting of any workplace violence incidents or threats. Want to get started developing the required workplace violence prevention program by the July 1, 2024 deadline? Download my free workplace violence prevention checklist. It's a great roadmap for you to follow as you develop a workplace violence prevention plan. Just click on the link in the description below.